Hello YouTubers, 2010 Toyota RAV4, and we will be changing the pinion seal on rear diff. So to begin the job we need to drain the oil, and that is 10mm Allen key. I already inserted it into the drain plug, so we will drain the oil first. So while the oil is draining, we will inspect the drain plug. So we can see there is a little bit of residue on top, but nothing major. No big chunks, no rough shaving, just normal turn wear. So we'll get it clean. Alright, so next we will take wire brush, brake clean, and we'll clean all that oil around the drive shaft, so when we get the pinion seal out, everything is nice and clean. Okay, so next we need to remove 4 13mm nuts, but before we do that we want to mark the position of the shaft and the pinion. So I took a punch, make a mark here and over here. You can use the marker, but usually at one point you will be washing this, so those marks will come off quite easily. But when you use the punch, it's there forever. So 13mm. To get one on top, ideally you would need to spin the shaft. To spin the shaft you need to have the front wheels off the ground. So I will probably just use ratchet and try to get it without lifting the front, but that's the next step. 4 13mm nuts, take them off. So now when all those 4 bolts are removed, we'll take a pry bar and pry this out. There is a, seems like quite fresh silicone, so it might be stuck quite well. So we will get the pry bar in here and try to disconnect this clutch from the main body of the diff. So I get it loose, and now you can see the oil is coming out, so be ready to catch the oil. I have a tray underneath, but if you pry more, there will be probably a good dump of oil. So yeah, just work your way around, make sure that that silicone seal is loose. Alright, so I have got it loose and there is lots of oil coming out. So for now I just take like a small screwdriver to increase the gap, but it's still quite tight, it's not moving. So I think I will have to remove at least one of those brackets. So 2 bolts on a diff, one over here, just to get access to the other side of the clutch. Okay, so the clutch is out. I ended up getting out those 4 bolts. So now the diff is kind of loose and we were able to wiggle it out. It was stuck on the silicone quite well, so basically use a small screwdriver to pry it slightly and then use a punch to go in between and separate it. So next what we need to do, we need to remove this electromagnetic clutch, this black piece, or coil to be exact. There is a snap ring, like this copper snap ring over here. So we will get that out, and then as you can see on the back there is a wire harness coming to it, so it sends the signal when to engage and when to disengage. So we'll need to remove the plastic connector from the back, and when we pry this coil out, we will push from the back so we don't break it over here. So let's get the snap ring out and then get the coil out by prying on that connector from the back. Alright, so here's that coil. To get this plug out, the connector that sits on this coil, it's just a nightmare. There is not enough room to stick your hand, so I was just using one screwdriver to push this tab, another to pry out the connector. Just terrible. Anyway, but when this is loose, so this will be your main prying point, so you pry it from here and then just gently wiggle it, either with a small screwdriver or even with hands, to get it out. So this is what we are left with. So this that coil housing has to come off. It's just 3 6mm Allen keys. So we'll get it out and seal will be behind. So actually it was 5mm Allen bolts. So here's the base. Remember to put that notch up where that connector goes. So we'll get that out for now. So now there are a couple of washers. We'll just put them in the same way, so the thin comes out first, goes in last, thick comes out last, goes in first. And here's the seal. So we will use a pry bar to get the seal out, and if you look how deep it sits, so let's take a look at our housing for the coil, and I'm pretty sure that that housing is supposed to push the seal in, but I will double check. I'll double check and let you know. Right, so I have measured the lip on this housing, and it's roughly 4mm. And then I measured how deep was the seal, and it was roughly 7mm, to be exact, 6.8. So the seal has to sit deeper than this housing race goes in. So the seal should not be in touch with this housing. So in terms of the seal, we got SKF seal, the part number 21264. Looks quite similar to the old one. So to get the seal in, I don't have any special installer. I will be using 2-inch socket. Also I used this hose clamp. I set it at 6.8mm from the top or bottom of the socket. So when we use the socket to push the seal in, you can see that the socket is slightly smaller than the seal, so it will not hit the case. It will be going deeper and deeper, but this should stop it from going too deep. And obviously when we are getting close, we will check in a few spots how deep we are, and then probably we'll just use the punch to get to the position where we want to be with the seal. Alright, slight change to the plan. Because of this shaft sticking out, I was not able to use the socket that I have, so I got it flush just with the hammer. So now I will still use this housing and get started with the bolts to push the seal in those 4 millimeters, and then we'll remove it and we'll push it 3 millimeters more. Alright, so to get the seal all the way in, I just made this little tool. So this is 6.8 millimeters as we need it to be. So now instead of punching it and measuring all the time, we'll just go against the case and it should be even all the way around. So now when the seal is all the way in, you can install that housing for the coil, install the coil, and get the razor blade and clean this housing so we can apply fresh sealant. So the coil housing is installed and I have torqued this to 46 inch-pounds. Those are M5 bolts. I don't have specific torque for this vehicle, but for M5 we are looking around 46 inch-pounds. Okay, so now when everything was nice and clean, I applied RTV silicone. It's important to go around the holes where the bolts are and those guide pins. So we apply silicone only on one surface and we will get this installed. We have 4 bolts that we are going to torque to 190 inch-pounds and let it sit for the night to dry out. One thing to remember before we put the clutch back, to put those washers in. So the thick one goes first, the thin one goes second one. So now we should be good to install the clutch. Okay, so now when the clutch is installed, we will torque those 4 bolts to 200 inch-pounds and let that ATV silicone dry out for a day or so. Okay, so now when this is torqued, I went ahead and get those bolts started for the brackets. But before you do that, just on top of the diff there is the breather. You want to make sure that that cap can spin freely. If it is stuck, most likely that your breather is plugged with dust and mud. So get it loose, wiggle it, gently hit it with the hammer a few times to get the dust out, and make sure that it's loose, because if it is plugged, this seal will be probably blown away next time the temperature rises in a diff and oil pressure will go up. So important to make sure that that breather is working as expected. I won't get those tight yet since I will be replacing the axle seals, but next what we can do, we can get the shaft back. Remember about the mark that we made. So the shaft that you joined goes back in that exact same position. Torque those probably the same to 200 inch-pounds. Personally, I would use some Loctite on those bolts. And next thing that you want to do is to fill the diff with fluid. The user manual asks for SAE 90, so we will be using full synthetic 75W90, I believe. So the fill plug is on the passenger side at the back, and same as the drain plug, it's 10mm Allen key. So you want to make sure that your vehicle is leveled and you fill until the fluid starts to come out. That will be your level. And another thing not to forget is that connector to the clutch. Again, like there is not much room, for it to work on, but probably will be easier to get on than to remove it. So get the plug, get the shaft back, fill it with fluid, and you should be good to go. Thanks for watching. Do it yourself.